always be shipping. That's a message you'll see throughout the hallways inside this warehouse. If you've driven down Chattahoochee Avenue near the works, also right down the street from Lucie Studios, you have driven by Saltbox. They got their start right before COVID, and in this episode, we're sitting down with one of their co-founders, Tyler Scribner. Lucie, the name means light. The majority of our team has worked in newsrooms throughout the country. We've seen the negatives. At Lucie, we explore the positives. And through this video series, we spotlight them. People, places, businesses, nonprofits, you name it. Storytelling is at the heart of our company, and we know sharing a story makes connections. It's simple, informative, and empowering. So without further ado, let's go. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us here on the Lucie Spotlight. It is bustling in here inside the Saltbox. Tell us where this idea originated.
Yeah, so I moved to Atlanta in 2016, and I'd come from Silicon Valley, and was working in big tech, and but at heart was an entrepreneur from Jacksonville, as we talked about earlier, and really wanted to experience a different form of entrepreneurship. And so I decided to buy a small e-commerce company, partly as an investment, but partly as an opportunity to, just dive into, again, a different type of entrepreneurship. And so I did that, and pretty quickly came to realize that running a logistically driven, small business was challenging, and I think the core of that challenge, the root of that challenge, was that we did not have the essential infrastructure that we needed, to operate well. We had to run, we had to turn our break room into a makeshift warehouse. We had to, bribe the mailman to take away all the packages. We had to use our basement at home as a photo studio, and it was just tough. And at some point, I realized that there were millions more entrepreneurs in the same situation. There were going to be many more, given the way things were going, and that it was a problem that was worth solving.
What was that first e-commerce business? What did you do?
It's a company called True Glory Hair, and we sell, I still own the company actually, and my wife leads it. We sell hair products, wigs, hair extensions, and the like. And it's a business that's grown over the years, but certainly at its core, it's still very much a small business.
And this, we're sitting in what is the first location for Saltbox?
This is actually our second location in Atlanta, and maybe our fifth or sixth location, nationally. The first location is just around the corner, a few minutes away, and you'll see that it's quite a bit smaller and a bit more humble. We didn't really know what we were doing back then, but now we make them pretty large.
And so when did you kind of see the shift? All right, this is really working out at that first location.
That's a great question. I mean, I think we opened at a challenging time. We opened the first location in December of 2019, and as you know, March of 2019 brought a very different world to us. And there were there were many I think small points of signal that emerged there, but I think the one that stands out to me most is I was touring an early would-be member in Saltbox, and at the end of that tour, she almost began to shed a tear, and I said, what's going on here? And she said, I have to tell you, Tyler, I had a dream about this. I prayed about this, and here it is. And she said that. I said, what do you value most about Saltbox? And she said, honestly, when you're running a business out of your garage, it really kind of questions the core legitimacy of what you're doing. It kind of feels like the world maybe is against me, but when I step into this place that is clearly built to support me, I feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile. I feel like maybe I should be doing this, and maybe I can be successful. And so it just, in essence, gives me back a sense of dignity and confidence, that my business is worth running. And I don't think there's anything better that someone in my position, could hear. And so I've heard similar, forms of that many times over now, but, back in 2020, that was pretty meaningful to me. And I think gave me a lot of confidence that not only is what we were doing, of practical value, but represented a form of value that went well beyond that and likely would, really resonate with a lot of people.
Walk us through being an entrepreneur with your e-commerce business, and then the light bulb goes off, and then you have other co-founders. Y'all come together and you start formulating this business. Tell us about that journey.
My wife would tell you that, I have an idea about every day. I have a decent idea about once a month, right? And maybe never have a great one, but I thought that Saltbox was a great idea. I really did. But the important point I want to make actually is that, for me there was a clear distinction between whether or not this company should exist versus whether or not I should lead and start the company. And these are two different things, which I think is something that one doesn't instinctively get to. You have to kind of learn through trial and error that starting a business is very, very challenging, and just because an idea is a good one doesn't mean that you should do it. and so thankfully at that time I'd seen enough to be able to kind of delineate between those two considerations, but I was also convicted enough and personally passionate enough about the idea and the problem that I felt it was worth pursuing.
What does the name Saltbox mean? Where did it come from?
I originally named the company SparePad just as a placeholder. Pretty obvious but boring name. And hired a firm here in Atlanta to help us come up with some names. One of the names they came up with was Saltbox. My first reaction to that name was no, I don't like it. But I was sitting one day in a Starbucks with one of my co-founders, and we were discussing this, and I said, if Starbucks can be Starbucks, then Saltbox I think can be Saltbox, because they have a similar alliteration, I think is the word I'm looking for. No one knows what a Starbucks is, but it seems to work quite well. And Saltbox sounds the exact same phonetically, and so let's go with that. And which I think is true, by the way. I think it is a structurally good name, but more importantly, I think once we got over that hurdle, we began to find real meaning in the name. And the meaning in the name is that a Saltbox, as you may know, is a form of a residential architecture that was really popular in the 17th and 18th centuries, and the house kind of has a flat front and a lean-to roof structure that kind of goes like that. And in the back of the house, you have a working shed. Maybe you were a welder or something of this nature, doing hard work. But you would retreat in the evenings back into your home, and it was comfortable and warm. And we thought that was a good analogy for what's happening here.
Having spent time on the West Coast, why did you settle on Atlanta being the first Saltbox location?
Atlanta is a real world as far as I'm concerned, but it's also a city that is, as you know, is thriving. It has I think a very, very positive future.
What kind of businesses are in your different Saltbox locations?
You never know who you're going to find at Saltbox. I think one of the most interesting companies that I encountered one day, it was in Miami. There was a unnamed but major medical device provider who operates a urgent delivery kind of dispatch center, and so they have these spinal cord surgery cases.
Yeah.
They're these kind of look like bombs, these silver hard shell cases. And when there's a traumatic injury, when someone breaks their back, they literally dispatch these things to the hospital, and so it's what sort of place do you find a florist next to
that
life-saving dispatch office.
In essence, this might be where you can say this is really where the magic happens?
This is where the magic happens. This is the lifeblood of Saltbox, right? Packages coming and going all day. And I think one of the one of the core value props of what we do is the ability just to drop this stuff off here and leave. If you've ever been in the position of, a small business who's shipping often, you're very familiar with having to chase the mailman, or having to, get to the UPS store just before it closes and just before you got to cook dinner at home. And so the ability to drop off and run, or the ability to receive, a full, truck full of freight while you're off on vacation or, wherever you may be, is really a wonderful thing.
What is it like for you, walking through the hallways here of Saltbox and seeing the growth that you guys have been able to accomplish over your existence?
In a word, it is deeply fulfilling, but also it really pulls at you. And the reason it pulls, the fulfilling piece perhaps is obvious. I think the challenge of it is not obvious. And the challenge of it is that, when you build a place like this, that, is home to 150 plus small businesses, you see it all, right? You see the joyful moments, the success, but you also see the hard moments.
Yeah.
And you become very invested in the success of these companies. And when they don't succeed, that's difficult, And so, I, of course, want to see everyone here achieve great success. But that's just not the reality.
How many businesses are in this particular Saltbox?
There are about 165 companies here.
Okay, great.
And a little over 1,000 nationally today. And
Gotcha.
Of course, continue to add more.
And content, that's our world. I see you guys have the content studio.
We certainly don't have the same setup as you guys, but these, our members take a lot of pictures.
Come on in.
And so we provide this space to conduct shoots, and it provides the core of what you need, some good lighting, good backdrops, et cetera. And we don't actually execute the photography, but we have, a lot of folks in the ecosystem who are, always happy to come in. We also have a podcast studio as well.
Yeah, where's that?
That's
Let's go look at that. Let's go check it out. We just saw the content studio. Now we're in the podcast studio.
Yeah.
Share with all the businesses out there, the business owners that are watching. You guys built this for a reason. The whole point of, promoting the business is all about content.
Yeah. Well, listen, no better way today to be heard than to have a podcast, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have a podcast, what are you doing? I don't have one, by the way.
Yeah.
So
it's becoming saturated, but there is still
when
you stick with it.
Exactly.
You got to stick with it.
It's funny enough. I actually we made a few podcast episodes back in 2020. In fact, we actually had Garrett on one of those podcasts. Garrett from Flock Safety, and a number of really wonderful entrepreneurs, but did not stick with it.
Yeah.
But anyway, we created this, out of demand. A lot of our members, obviously are looking for ways to grow and tell their stories, and so. But I think that the bigger point for us, though, is that core to our business model and strategy is taking big, expensive, capital-intensive things that small businesses need and fractionalizing access to those things in a way that make them accessible. And so whether it's a podcast studio with a few $1,000 worth of equipment, or whether it's a forklift or a warehouse, the concept there is the same. Take the big thing, make it smaller, make it more flexible, and make it accessible.
Tyler, thank you so much. Congrats on your growth
Craig.
over the past 5.5+ years. And we can't wait to see what's next.
I appreciate it.
11 spots and beyond, I guess, huh?
Yeah, 11 to 500.
There we go, 11 to 500. Lofty goals, but very possible goals.
Very possible.
All right, man. Thanks so much. Our mission is simple. Create your news. When we create it, we hope to spotlight your purpose. Life's too short to be stuck in a world that becomes stale. What's your purpose? Are you living it? If not, the time is now. Thanks for listening and watching. Carpe Diem.